Hello and welcome to the Edupedia world. In this tutorial, we'll be learning about final and static keyword. So let's begin learning. Firstly, we'll be covering up the final keyword and probably in the next video, we'll be covering up static keyword. So let's begin with final. So final can be used with three things. One is final instance variable, other is final method, another can be a final class. So let's see each of them one by one and see what's the use of them and what are the restrictions that are placed by putting a final keyword. So first is final instance variable. It says principle of least privilege. Code should have only the privilege and access it needs to accomplish its task, but no more. Final instance variable is used by using keyword final. Specifies that a variable is not modifiable, it is a constant. So if you just put a value of a final instance variable, then the value will remain as it is. You cannot modify that value later on. And also final instance variable need to be initialized as soon as they are declared. Final instance variable can be initialized at their declaration. If they are not initialized in their declaration, they must be initialized in all constructors. Software Engineering Observation 8.13. Declaring an instance variable as final helps enforce the principle of least privilege. If the instance variable should not be modified, declare it to be final to prevent modification. If you want to give least privilege to any variable and you are sure that this instance variable values will not be modified any further, then you can do it by declaring final. Just for an example, if you are to calculate the area of certain circular things and then there's a value of pi, then the value of pi is stored in a particular variable, but you want to keep it as constant and you are not ever changing it. So you can declare a variable pi as final and give it a value as 3.14. So since you don't intend to change the value of pi anywhere in your code further, then it's safe to initialize it final. So like this is a example of that. You can see that we have a final instance variable. We are having a class increment and then we are having a normal variable which is private int total, and then we are having a final int variable which is increment. So it's a constant variable and over here you can see it's uninitialized. Okay. Then we are having constructor initialize final instance variable increment. Then we are having a constructor that is actually initializing the value of increment. So it is going to initialize constant variable once and increment constructor. Then we have add increment total. Again we are doing like add increment total. So we are basically incrementing add, and basically we are incrementing total, and we are adding increment into that. And then we are having a method toString. So okay, so this is like increment.java class. Fine. So you can see we have declared a final variable over here and then we are initializing the final variable inside constructor. Fine. So then you can see we have a increment test class where we are having a main method. So in this you can see like we have created a object of increment class known as value and passed 5 to it. So when we pass 5 to it, you can see that the value will be initialized to it through a constructor and increment will have the value 5. So as soon as object is declared, the value must have been initialized, so it is getting initialized through constructor. Now we are actually printing the value of increment, which says before increment, and it is simply printing the value of increment. Okay. So whatever value is that, using a toString method actually just prints the total, and the value of total, like currently it will be 0 because we haven't called any method. Fine. After that, what we are doing is we are like creating a loop. Inside a loop, we are calling the add increment total method. So basically, we are adding 5 to total, which is 0 currently. So the value of total will become 10, and that's why you can see the output over here is giving us 10. Again, like in the increment 2, the value of total will become 10 because the total which was originally as 5 will be giving us a value again plus 1, so it will plus 5, it will be giving us a value as 10, and so on 15. So in this case, you can see like the value that we want to increment each time is 5. So that's why we have declared that as a final constant. So that makes sense. I hope so that's clear. So here, like create an increment object, call the method to add increment to total. Okay. Okay, now we have a error prevention tip which says that attempts to modify a final instance variable are caught at compilation time rather than causing execution time errors. It is always preferable to get bugs out of compilation time if possible, rather than allow them to slip through a execution time, where studies have found that the cost of repair is often many times more expensive. So you see what it's trying to say is that if we attempt to modify a final instance variable, then that will be caught at compilation time only. Okay? So that means if it's caught at compilation time, then before runtime only you'll get to know that you are doing a mistake, you are doing a error. So just make sure that whenever you are using a final instance variable, do not modify it. Okay. Another observation states that a final feed should also be declared static if it is initialized in its declaration. Once a final feed is initialized in its declaration, its value can never change. Fine. So if it's a final feed and as well as it's static, then it should be initialized at its declaration. You must have observed that in a previous example where we declared the value of final through constructor. So that's fine if the variable is just final. But if the variable is final and static, then you must initialize it at the time of declaration itself. Fine. And once a final field is initialized in its declaration, its value can never change. Therefore, it is not necessary to have a separate copy of the field for every object of the class. Making the field static enables all the objects of class to share the final field. So yeah, that's true. If you are making it final as well as static, so the static will enable the object to be shared throughout all the objects of the class. So if we are creating 10 objects and it's a final static field for all the objects, the value will remain same and constant. Fine. Okay, so common programming error. So let's see what it is about. It's saying not initializing a final instance variable in its declaration or even in a constructor of a class yields a compilation error indicating that variable might not have been initialized. Yeah, that's true. If you are not going to initialize in constructor or even at declaration, then you will definitely get a compile time error. The same error occurs if the class initializes the variable in some but not all of the class constructors. Fine. So moving forward. Okay, so over here you can see in our increment.java, we were having like a end increment constructor. So, we are having a line and here it says variable increment might not have been initialized. And where it would say like uh, and increment constructor line. So let's go back to increment.java to see where it's saying this error will occur. So you can see like wherever we are, ending the increment constructor, so over here it will give us an error. The error is saying that it's not initialized. It might not have been initialized. So that is the error. Okay. So yeah, that was about a final variable. So before moving to static, let me just try to do some of the example of final variable. Okay. So let's open our Eclipse IDE and let's try out something. Okay guys, so here I'm going to create one of a class. So in order to create a class, if you haven't created any project, just go to file and then you can go to new and then you can go to project. So in by doing that, you can create a project and after that you can create a package. So once you have created a package, you can just simply right click on a package, go to new and then class and then give a name of your class. So over here I'm giving a name as final example and let me create a main method also. Okay, for now, okay, yeah, I think I'm good with that. So it's taking time. Yeah. Now my final example class is created and it is having a main method. So now let me just create another class which is class my final, and let's create one of our, a final instance variable in this. So let me just create final double, and the name I'm giving is pi, and the value that I'm giving is 3.14. Okay, so it's absolutely fine now. This I can just either do it in a like constructor also. So if I'm going to do it in a constructor, it will be like double and pi, and could be this dot pi equals to pi. Fine. So let's see. Okay, so it cannot use like this dot pi. So just let me mm, change it to p. So you see, if I'm doing like this, it's fine. So either you can just give the value over here as we have done just now and removed it, or you can do it by giving it a value through the constructor. So like if I'm going to just do it like this, then it will give me an error over here because I can do just one of these two things. So let me just remove it, and over here let me create the method, or let me create the firstly the object of this class. So if I'm going to create an object of this class, so it would be something like that, and fine, I need to pass something. So in a constructor, so this is what I'm doing, and over here let me just um you know so okay, as you can see, I have overridden the toString method, and I've just used a bit of formatting to display my double value, and hopefully this will display the value of pi. So over here you can see I'm getting the value as 3.14 and 00. Why? So just I've used F. So I haven't used the precision with it. That's why it's giving me a value up to the 4 digit. So that's fine. I'm okay with that. And yeah, so you can see this is a final constant. So I was just trying to show you how I can do that by passing the value to a constructor. Or what else I can do is I can, not pass into a constructor, and let me create another default constructor also so that it's just stop giving me an error over here. And over here, let me do this and let me comment this out. So this is also good, and we can have this one also. So if I just try to run it, it will give me the same output. Okay guys, so you can see I've just formatted it to just print 3.14 just by using the precision for decimal. So if you just do it like 0.2, so it will give you a precision up to 2 decimal point. So that's what you can do to print the exact value. Okay, so this was an example of final instance variable. Let's also do an example of final class. Let me make this class as final. Okay, so you can see as soon as I made this class as final, okay, I need to put it over here. Yeah. So you can see as soon as I made this class as final, so the thing is that this class cannot be subclassed or it cannot be inherited. If we try to do that, it will give us a compile time error. Let's try to do that just to, show you. Okay, I'm doing it like class derived my final, and I'm doing extends, and then I'm doing my final. So you can see If I do that, it's giving me an error, and the error is that remove final modifier from my final. So you can see it's giving me option to remove my final modifier from my final, otherwise it will give me an error. That's because I cannot, like extend or inherit a final class. So that was what, and let me just, remove it. So this is the thing with final class, that it cannot be subclassed, okay? If I have a final method, let me just make it a class as a normal class, and let me have a final method over here, okay? So I'm going to do public final print, and I'm just going to print here pi value, okay? So this is like a final method that I have created, and okay. So here what I'm doing is I'm just creating another class, and I'm extending my final. So to extend, I'll not have a issue, but if I try to override the method print, it will give me an issue because you cannot override a final method. So it's saying remove final modifier. So if I remove just this final modifier, it won't have a issue. So that's a problem. You cannot override a final method, and we have already seen that you cannot change the value of final field. If you try to do that, so let me just try to change the value of pi over here. So you see it's giving me an error. It's not allowing me to change the value of pi over here. If I just do it through a constructor, then also it will give me an error. Let me show you that also. So you can see over here I'm just taking double D, and I'm doing pi equals to D, and I'm removing the value from here. Fine. So now it's fine. But yeah, I just need to add a constructor double. So just let me remove this right now. Okay. So this is fine. Now if I just try to change the value of pi over here, it will still give me an error. So if I'm trying to do this, this will definitely have a problem. Or if I just try to do this, and then I'm going to do my final, and let me just create a method that will take double D and pi equals to D. So you see over here I'm just creating a method to assign something to pi, and it's not allowing me to do that. It's still giving me an error. So that make it very clear that you cannot override, or you cannot reinitiate or change the value of a final variable. So that was the point that I was trying to convey. And then we can change the state of a object to which final reference is pointing, but we cannot reassign new object to this final reference. So that means, like, if you're having a object and that object is like final, okay, then we can change the content of it. Like if it is having the various instance variable, we can change the value of instance variable, but we cannot reassign the object. Okay guys, so another point is that if it is not initialized as a declaration, final variable can be initialized in constructor or in instance initialization block, or if static, then in static block. So these are the three places where we can initialize final variable, and final method can be inherited, but they cannot be overridden. So if I'm saying inherited, that means if you are having a subclass, then you can inherit that method, but you cannot override that method. So I hope so it's clear, and let's demonstrate that as well. So I'm having this class, and let me have a final method. So this is my final method, and now let me have another class which I'm saying is my class, and it will extend my final method. And now let me just create a object of my class by using a reference of my final. So this is what I have done, and now let me just try to call print method. And now I'm just running the program. You can see it's printing 3.40, and that's because I'm printing till like the value of pi over here. And another thing is that, like you can see over here, since we are extending it, so it is inheriting this method print, but we are not able to override this method. So yeah, that's about it. We cannot override a final method, but we can inherit it. So that was about the final keyword. I hope so that you have enjoyed learning it, and we'll learn about the static keyword in the future next tutorial. So okay guys, thank you very much. Let's meet in the next tutorial. Thank you.